All right, welcome back. We finally made it to the Bootstrap grid system. So this is something a lot of people use in Bootstrap. It's probably the most commonly used piece of Bootstrap, but on its own, there's actually nothing to see. It's not a component like a nav bar or an alert or a button where there's an immediate impact. It's more of an underlying structure behind the scenes that helps you lay out your web pages. It helps you make different responsive layouts for the same website. So here's an example. There's a bunch of content on this web page. We've already seen this before. But what I want to call your attention to, within this container, so we probably know there's a container element here. So ignoring the space on the sides, within this container in the middle, how is the space divided? So this thing goes all the way across. That's not too difficult. But then we have these two little cards, and they take up 50% of the space each, roughly 50-50. It's an even split. And then down here, we have content with a sidebar. So this takes up maybe 70%, and this is 30%. I'm not sure on those numbers, but there's a different ratio of space, a different division of it. And then the important part is that it changes. So right here, everything switches over, and these cards now take up all of the available space. They go all the way across. They're not sharing 50-50 anymore. And the same is true for the sidebar. If you watch, it snaps down to the very bottom. Here we are. So the way that this is all done is using the grid system in Bootstrap. Bootstrap gives us an easy way to say, hey, this should take up 50%, this should take up 50%, except once we get to extra small, it should go all the way across. Or this should take up 70%, but once we get to extra small, it goes all the way across. And of course, we can move it around at any point. We could do the opposite if you wanted to make a horrible experience, have things split up here 50-50, and then once we hit extra large, have them go all the way across. It's up to you how you want to implement it. But the point is that we can take space and divide it really simply. Okay, so I'm here on the documentation. You can find it under documentation, layout, which you haven't spent much time in. We've been working in components and utilities. And then the first thing you'll see, we've talked about containers, but I want to point out that they are required when using the grid system. So if you are taking advantage of the grid system, you have to put everything in a container. You don't have to use just one container. You can have many different grids across your page, but we need a container. But that's not all, because if we look at grid, within the container, there are two additional classes we need to talk about. The first is row. So anytime you want content to go across your container, you make a row. And then within that, you divide it using column classes, so COL. And I actually don't like that they start with this example. I prefer, keep going down here, this example here. So what we have here is a container. Inside the container, we have two rows. As you can see here, here's our first row, and here's our second row. And then in the first row, we have two columns. One column, two columns. So it's divided up equally between two columns in that one horizontal row. But then further down, we have a different row that has three columns, and so it's divided equally between three. So this example shows how to make equal width columns, which a lot of times you do want. You want things to divide the space equally. So let's play around with this first. So I have a new file, grid basics, and I'm going to start by making my container. I have to add that. And then I'm going to add a row. And inside this row, I'm going to add three different columns, so COL. And inside of each one, let's just add some text. Let's just say, I don't know, first. And then I'm going to duplicate these. I'll do second and third. And if I save and look at it, it's not, you can see what's going on here, but it's hard to actually see where the boundaries of everything is. So I'm going to quickly add some style to this row. I'm going to give it a border, and I'm also going to give it a height like we have right here. Maybe I'll do 200. Then I'm going to give each of our columns a background. So I'll start with info, and then this one can have success, and then maybe this one will have primary. And I'll save. Okay, so now you can see how our space is being divided. Now our text isn't centered, but that's okay. You can see though that it's even. So if I remove one of these columns by commenting it out, now we get that space divided up two ways instead of three. And I could add another one in here, duplicate this, and give it background of, I don't know, danger. And now it's divided up 4 ways. Okay, so if I wanted a second row below this, imagine this is not colored backgrounds, but this is, I don't know, photos, or I don't know, different things that you would have divided up, maybe these little cards or something. So we have 4 of them. If I want another row, all I have to do is I'm just going to duplicate this row and change it. So below this row, we can have another row in the same container. And this one I'm only going to give 2 items to, and save. And now we have a second row right below it. Okay, so far this row is not really responsive. Each row, it keeps the same ratios. It's always dividing the space evenly 4 ways and always 2 ways down here. And that's fine, but we want to be able to make it responsive. We want to make it probably go to single elements across at the extra small size. But furthermore, what if we don't want evenly spaced items? We don't want things that take up the same amount of space, like we saw here. These are even, but this is not. This takes up far more space than the sidebar. So this is where we need to talk about the available space to us in any row. There's always 12 units of space. So if we look at this, each row has 12 units. This is taking up 3, 3, 3, and 3, which gives us 12. Here we have 6 and 6, which also gives us 12. So if we want to specify a width exactly, we can use the class column dash and then a number of units. So we could have created this by saying column 6, column 6, column 3, column 3, column 3, column 3. But if you know you want equal widths, it's easier just to say column. Now, if we want to divide things up on our own though, which often we do, I'll come down here and just do sort of custom widths or something like that. We'll do another row, which I'll just copy so we have the same height and border. And then for each column, we can start and let's do something that takes up 8 units, column 8, and then another one that takes up 4 units. And that should give us 12. And let's add some content in there. Let's just say 8 and 4. And I'll do the same thing with a background. Let's do BG danger and BG warning. There we go. So we're now taking up 8 units here and 4 units here. And I could change that at any point. I could say, actually, I want to do 1 unit and 11. And remember, we have 12 to work with. So I could instead do 3 and 8. And clearly I can't do math. What we need to do is 4 and 8 or 3 and 9. There we go. You can see that we had that 1 space left over. Okay, so I'll do just one more below this. And this time, let's do a couple of columns. So let's do a layout where we have 3 on each side, like a sidebar on left and right side, and then our main content in the middle. So we'll do 2 and 2 for those sidebars. And then that gives us 4 units. So on the inside, we'll have 8. And there we go. We could have our main content, sidebar, and sidebar on the right. Now back in the docs, they also show you that if you want, you can specify the width of one column and then leave the others just as col without a number, and they'll automatically share that remaining space. So I could have rewritten what I have here. I could have just said column 8 and then just left these as cols to share the remaining space, and there's no difference. So in the next video, I'll talk about making things responsive, because right now we're keeping the same layout no matter what. But I'll just show you, instead of doing backgrounds, we could also come down here and do something with text. Or yeah, let's just do some text and play around with that. So I'll come down after this row right here, and let's do an H3 that just says demo with text. I don't know, probably don't need that. So we'll do a row, because we need a row. And let's do, I don't know, on the left side, we'll do column 9 and put a bunch of text in there. So we'll do a paragraph with like lorem, I don't know, 40, and save. Okay. And then after that, we'll do column with 3, and this will be our sidebar. And in this sidebar, we could do whatever we want. Let's say we put a nav in there. So we can do our div class with nav, and then we have a couple of nav links, which I need to make an a tag. A dot nav link. And let's just do a couple of these. I'll just say home, about, same dumb stuff we've been doing. Contact, and I don't know, sign out. Okay, so now what we have here, it's not very pretty, but we have this on the left that takes up, what do we do, 9 units, and this on the right that takes up 3 units. And yeah, things, you might want this to always be vertical, so we could do that on our nav by giving it flex column, which will keep it as a column always, as you can see here. And there we go. It's not perfect, it's not beautiful, but we're at least dividing space up, and you can see how that would work. Without the grid system, this paragraph would go all the way across, and this nav would also go all the way across, right? It would be on its own. So next up, I'm going to show you how we can start experimenting by making things responsive, make this, take up 10 units on extra large, or make this hide on a certain size, or make it go to its own row, that sort of thing.